The Hindu Kush Mountains stretched endlessly beneath a moonless sky, their peaks wrapped in silence so profound it felt like the world had forgotten how to breathe. December 24th, Christmas Eve. -26 degrees Celsius. The kind of cold that turned breath to ice crystals before they left your lungs. Lieutenant Aria Hale pressed her eye to the scope, her breath controlled to the point of stillness. Call sign, Halo. 32 confirmed kills in the past 18 months. Tonight would add to that count, though she took no pleasure in the mathematics of death. Below her position, wedged into a crevice 200 meters up the western face, 12 Navy SEALs moved through the valley in tactical formation. She could see their thermal signatures through her night optics, green ghosts against the darker cold of rock and ice. Her shoulder ached where shrapnel had torn through it 3 months prior. The doctors had cleared her for duty, but the scar tissue pulled tight in the cold, a constant reminder that the body kept its own ledger of wounds. She shifted her weight, ignoring the pain, focusing instead on the rifle in her hands. The Barrett M82A1 had been her companion through 17 missions. She knew its quirks better than she knew most people. In her breast pocket, folded tight against the cold, lay an unfinished letter. Asterisk. Dear Mom and Dad, this will be my last Christmas deployed, I promise. When I get home, will, asterisk. She hadn't finished it. Somehow, writing the words felt like tempting fate. Halo, Trident 6, Sitrep. Commander Nathan Pierce's voice crackled in her earpiece. All clear, Trident 6. No movement on the eastern ridge line. You're good to proceed. Copy that. Stay frosty up there. Aria smiled despite herself. Stay frosty. In -26 degrees, there was no other option. The SEALs moved deeper into the valley, approaching the cave complex where intelligence suggested a high-value target had taken refuge. Aria's job was simple. Watch their backs, provide overwatch, eliminate any threats that emerged from unexpected angles. Simple. Until it wasn't. The first explosion came without warning. One moment, the valley floor was empty save for the SEAL team. The next, it erupted in a chain of detonations that turned night into day. Aria's scope flared white with the sudden light. She blinked hard, forcing her eyes to adjust. When her vision cleared, she saw them. 40, maybe 50 fighters emerging from positions that hadn't existed on any map or satellite image. They had dug in deep, camouflaged their positions so perfectly that even thermal imaging had missed them. Now they swarmed like wasps from a disturbed nest, pouring automatic weapons fire into the valley. The SEALs returned fire, their training evident in every movement. But they were outnumbered 4 to 1, caught in a kill zone with nowhere to hide. Aria went to work. First target, a machine gunner on the northern ridge, raking fire across the SEAL position. She led him by half a body length, accounting for wind and distance. Squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the gunner spin and drop. Second target, RPG team setting up on the eastern face. She adjusted for the elevation difference. Fired. The loader went down. His partner grabbed the weapon, trying to aim it alone. She chambered another round. Fired again. He fell backward into the rocks. Halo, Trident 6. You're keeping us alive up there. We're pulling back to Rally Point Echo. Cover our 6. Roger that. Aria's voice was calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She shifted position, scanning for new threats. The SEALs began their tactical retreat, moving in pairs, covering each other as they fell back toward the extraction point 2 clicks south. Aria methodically picked off anyone who tried to flank them. 8 shots. 8 kills. The enemy learned to fear the positions she'd marked with her rifle. Then the weather changed. It started as a whisper of wind, then built to a roar. Within minutes, the valley disappeared behind a wall of snow. Visibility dropped to 20 meters, then 10, then 5. The temperature plummeted further. Aria could feel the cold seeping through her gear, settling into her bones. Trident 6, Halo, I've lost visual on your position. Storm's too thick. Static answered her. She adjusted her radio frequency, tried again, more static. Through brief clearings in the blizzard, she caught glimpses of muzzle flashes below. The enemy hadn't been deterred by the weather. They pressed forward, knowing the storm favored them now. Aria made a decision. She began working her way down from her position, moving toward where she'd last seen the SEALs. Maybe she could link up with them, provide close support until the storm passed. She descended 50 meters when her radio crackled to life. All units, Route Whiskey is compromised. Primary extraction point is under heavy fire. Secondary extraction point is closed due to weather. All teams proceed to tertiary extraction point Victor immediately. I say again, all teams to Victor immediately. Aria pressed her transmit button. Trident 6, Halo. What's your status? Do you need support reaching Victor? The response that came back wasn't from Commander Pierce. It was from someone higher up the chain. Someone in a warm operations center hundreds of miles away. Halo, command, Trident 6 is wheels up in 3 minutes. Storm window is closing. They cannot delay. Understood. Give me their coordinates. I'll link up with them at Victor. A pause. Too long. Negative. Halo. Victor is 11 clicks from your current position. Through enemy territory. In whiteout conditions. Trident 6 cannot wait. Aria felt something cold that had nothing to do with the weather settle in her chest. Command, are you telling me to extract alone? Another pause. She could hear muffled voices in the background, people arguing. Then, Halo, this is Colonel Bradford. I need you to listen carefully. The enemy has your position bracketed. They know you're up there. The SEALs are compromised and need immediate extraction. We cannot risk the aircraft or the team waiting for you to cover 11 clicks in zero visibility. Sir, I can make it. Give me 2 hours. You don't have 2 hours. The window closes in 20 minutes. Aria closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the storm seemed to have thickened, as if the mountain itself was closing in around her. Sir, I've provided overwatch for 17 missions. I've saved those men more times than Lieutenant Hale. Bradford's voice was iron. This is not a debate. You will hold your position. You will evade enemy contact. You will wait for secondary extraction when weather permits. Trident 6 cannot wait. Do you understand your orders? In the background, faintly, she heard Commander Pierce's voice. Sir, we can't just... Commander, get your team on that bird. Now. Aria's hand shook as she released the transmit button. She looked down at the valley, where somewhere in that white chaos, 12 men she'd bled with were being ordered to leave her behind. Her radio crackled once more. Pierce's voice, low and urgent. Halo, we're coming back for you. 5 minutes, we'll find a way. Then another voice, colder. Trident 6, you have 3 minutes to be on that aircraft or I will leave all of you. Do you copy? Silence. Then, copy. Aria pulled the letter from her pocket. Her fingers were numb, clumsy. She looked at the unfinished words, at the promise she'd almost made. Then she tore it in half. The top half, with her parents' names, she tucked back in her pocket. The bottom half, with her promise to come home, she held for a moment before letting the wind take it. She pulled out her knife and carved into the back of the remaining paper. Asterisk. I'll find my way home. Asterisk. The storm swallowed the sound of the helicopter. She didn't hear them leave. She only felt the absence, the sudden certainty that she was alone on this mountain with 40 men who wanted her dead or captured. Aria checked her ammunition. 73 rounds for the Barrett. 2 magazines for her sidearm. 4 grenades, 1 flare. She looked up at the white sky and whispered, "Merry Christmas to me." Then she began to move, looking for a position she could defend, because if she was going to die on this mountain, she would make them pay dearly for it. The snow fell heavier, covering her tracks as she climbed. 11 kilometers south, at Forward Operating Base Sentinel, Sergeant Beckett Ward was trying to make coffee from grounds that had been used twice already. Christmas Eve at a ranger outpost meant making do with whatever supplies hadn't been diverted to larger bases. The coffee tasted like dirt and regret, but it was hot, and that was enough. The operations center was quiet, skeleton crew on duty, while most of the company enjoyed a rare stand-down. Someone had strung up lights made from MRE packaging and electrical tape. A small plastic tree sat on the radio desk, decorated with spent shell casings spray-painted gold. Beckett was 34, a lifer who joined the Rangers at 19 and never looked back. His face was weathered beyond his years, marked by sun and sand and too many close calls. But his eyes were sharp, always watching, always calculating. He'd been monitoring the radio chatter out of habit more than necessity. The SEAL's operation wasn't his concern. Different unit, different mission. He was just killing time until his shift ended, and he could join the others for their makeshift Christmas dinner. That's when he heard it. The voice was faint, nearly lost in static and wind noise. Female. Controlled, but urgent. Any unit. This is call sign Halo. I am isolated at grid November 4, 73821. Enemy forces closing on my position. Primary extraction failed. Requesting immediate support. Beckett sat up straighter, turned up the volume. The transmission was breaking up, coming in fragments. Visual on approximately 40 hostiles. Low on ammunition, weather conditions deteriorating. If anyone receives this transmission, static swallowed the rest. Beckett grabbed a map, found the grid coordinates. His blood went cold. The position was on the western face of the mountain range, in terrain that would be suicidal to traverse even in good weather. In a blizzard, it was a death sentence. He keyed his own radio. Halo, this is Sentinel-7. I read you broken but readable. What is your status? No response. He tried again. Still nothing. He checked the command frequency, heard the tail end of a conversation between Colonel Bradford and what sounded like a SEAL commander. The words made his jaw tighten. No time. Leave her. Beckett stood so fast his chair toppled backward. He strode to the duty officer's desk. Sir, we've got a soldier in trouble. Female sniper, isolated on the western face. The SEALs left her. Captain Morris looked up from his paperwork, frowning. Left her? Yes, sir. I've got her approximate grid coordinates. She's surrounded, low on ammo, and there's a Category 5 blizzard moving in. Morris pulled up the weather data on his terminal. His frown deepened. Sentinel-7, that storm is going to be a complete whiteout within the hour. Winds up to 80 miles per hour. Ground visibility 0. We can't launch an extraction in those conditions. Then we go on foot. 11 clicks through enemy territory in a blizzard? That's suicide. Leaving her is murder, sir. Morris met his eyes. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then the captain sighed. Even if I wanted to approve this, I can't. Colonel Bradford made the call. He deemed the risk unacceptable. Bradford's not here. He's in a warm operations center 300 clicks away. He's also our commanding officer. Beckett leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. Sir, 3 years ago, I was pinned down in Helmand Province. Sniper kept me alive for 4 hours until the QRF could reach me. Never met her. Never learned her name. But I'm alive, because someone like that sniper out there decided my life was worth risking hers. Morris's expression softened slightly. Beckett, if we don't go, by morning there'll be nothing left but a body for the enemy to parade around. Is that the Christmas present we're giving her? Abandonment and propaganda footage? The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then, I can't order anyone to go on this mission. You're not ordering, sir. I'm volunteering. You can't go alone. Then I'll find others. Morris nodded slowly. If you're going, you leave in 30 minutes. That's the last window before the storm closes completely. No helicopters, no air support, no reinforcements. You'll be on your own. Understood, sir. Beckett turned to leave, but Morris called after him. Sergeant Ward, bring her home. And yourself, while you're at it. Yes, sir. Beckett moved through the outpost with purpose, finding the 5 men he trusted most. Corporal James Reeves, a former rock climber from Colorado. Specialist Marcus Chen, their medic. Private First Class David Torres, the youngest of the group at 22, but the best shot Beckett had ever seen. Staff Sergeant William Hayes, who'd been with Beckett through 3 deployments, and Specialist Tyler Morgan, their communications expert. He found them in the mess hall, gathered around their pathetic Christmas dinner. Canned turkey, instant potatoes, and something that was optimistically labeled as cranberry sauce. Beckett didn't waste words. There's a sniper trapped on the western face. The SEALs left her behind. The storm's closing in. She's got maybe 2 hours before she's either dead or captured. I'm going after her. I need volunteers. Reeves stood immediately. I'm in. Chen followed. Someone needs to keep you idiots alive. Torres set down his fork. What are we waiting for? Hayes and Morgan exchanged glances, then nodded together. Good, Beckett said. Grab your gear. We leave in 25 minutes. Travel light. Standard weapons, medical supplies, climbing equipment. No heavy gear, we need to move fast. What about specialized climbing equipment? Reeves asked. That face is going to be technical. We don't have time to requisition proper gear. We make do with what we have. That's insane. Probably. But so is leaving her. 23 minutes later, 6 Rangers stood in the motor pool, checking their equipment one last time. They wore white winter camouflage over their standard gear. Each man carried an M4 rifle, a sidearm, grenades, and whatever specialized equipment their role required. Chen had doubled his medical supplies. Reeves had grabbed every piece of climbing gear he could find: ice axes, a few carabiners, 50 meters of rope. It wasn't enough for a proper technical climb, but it would have to do. Morgan adjusted his radio pack. I'm picking up intermittent transmissions from her position. She's still alive, still fighting. Then let's not keep her waiting, Beckett said. They moved out as the first real gusts of the storm hit the base. The wind cut through their gear like knives. Visibility was already dropping. Within 5 minutes of leaving the gate, they could barely see the man in front of them. Beckett led them northeast, following his compass and memory of the terrain. The snow deepened with every step. The cold was relentless, finding every gap in their clothing, every moment of exposed skin. After an hour, Torres spoke up. Sergeant, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think she can hold out until we get there? Beckett thought about the voice he'd heard on the radio. Calm, professional, determined. Yes, he said. I think she can hold out a lot longer than anyone expects. Good, Torres said. Because this snow is getting worse, and we're not even halfway there. Beckett looked up at the white void around them. Somewhere ahead, through this frozen hell, a soldier was fighting alone. He thought about the sniper who'd saved him 3 years ago, about the debt he'd carried ever since. Then we move faster, he said. They pressed on into the storm, 6 men gambling their lives on the hope that they could reach one woman before the mountain, or the enemy claimed her first. Behind them, their tracks disappeared as quickly as they were made, erased by wind and snow. Ahead, the mountain waited, indifferent to their determination or their odds. Aria had found her fortress in the ruins of an old Soviet observation post. The stone walls were half collapsed, but they provided cover from 3 sides and a commanding view of the approaches. She'd used snow and rocks to fill the gaps, creating firing ports that would make it hard for the enemy to get a clean shot at her. The position had one major flaw: there was no escape route. She was boxed in against the mountain face, but beggars couldn't be choosers. She'd been here for 90 minutes. In that time, she'd counted 37 distinct enemy fighters moving through the terrain below her position. They were good, disciplined, patient, working in coordinated teams. These weren't the usual Taliban irregulars. These were professionals. They knew she was here. They'd found her first position, the one she'd been forced to abandon when they'd nearly flanked her. Now they were being cautious, having learned that rushing her meant death. Aria had 27 rounds left for the Barrett. She'd already used nearly 50, and each shot had counted. The bodies littered around her position were testament to that. But 27 rounds against 37 men was arithmetic that didn't work in her favor. The cold was becoming as dangerous as the enemy. Her hands were numb despite her gloves. Her feet had lost most feeling an hour ago. She knew the signs of hypothermia: confusion, drowsiness, slurred speech. She wasn't there yet, but the clock was ticking. Through her scope, she watched a group of fighters gather behind a rock formation 400 meters out. They were planning something, gesturing toward her position. She could take out 1, maybe 2 before the others scattered, but that would reveal her exact position and provoke a response. She waited. Patience was a sniper's greatest weapon. The ability to remain still, to ignore discomfort, to let the world move around you while you waited for the perfect moment. Aria had spent days in hides, watching, waiting. This was just another hide. A very cold, very dangerous hide. The enemy made their move at dusk, 6 men, moving in a coordinated rush from 3 different directions. They laid down suppressing fire, hundreds of rounds chewing through her stone walls and kicking up snow around her position. Aria ducked low, waiting for the barrage to ease. When it did, she popped up and acquired her first target. A fighter sprinting up the slope to her left. She led him, squeezed. He went down hard. Second target. Someone trying to flank right. She pivoted, fired, another down. The suppressing fire intensified. She dropped back behind cover as bullets sparked off the stones. Debris stung her face. She tasted blood where a rock fragment had cut her lip. When the firing paused, she moved to a different firing port. They'd expect her to pop up in the same place. She found her third target lining up a shot on her last position. She took him first. That left three still advancing. They'd reached the rocks below her position, were scrambling up the final approach. Too close for the Barrett. She dropped the rifle, drew her sidearm, and waited. The first fighter appeared at the edge of her position. She put 2 rounds center mass. He fell backward with a scream. The second was smarter, using his fallen comrade's body for cover as he tried to get an angle on her. Aria grabbed one of her grenades, pulled the pin, counted to 2, and tossed it. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. When the smoke cleared, the second fighter was gone. The third had retreated. Smart move. Aria returned to her rifle, checked her ammunition. 22 rounds. She keyed her radio, knowing it was probably futile, but trying anyway. Any unit. This is Halo. Still in the fight at November 473821. Ammunition low. Enemy probe repelled, but they'll be back. If anyone hears this, Merry Christmas. Static answered her. She settled back into position, scanning for the next attack. Her breath came in white clouds. The cold was reaching deeper now, making her muscles stiff, her reactions slower. She tried to stay alert, but exhaustion pulled at her like weights. 3 hours until dawn. If she could hold until then, maybe the weather would clear enough for extraction. It was a thin hope, but it was all she had. The enemy regrouped. This time they brought up a heavy machine gun, setting it up on a ridge across from her position. Aria watched through her scope as they mounted it, loaded the belt. When they opened fire, it was like hell arriving on her doorstep. The heavy rounds punched through her stone walls like they were paper. She pressed herself flat against the ground as debris rained down around her. The walls were disintegrating under the onslaught. She had to take out that gun. During a lull, while they reloaded, Aria rose to her knees, acquired the gunner, and fired. The man slumped over his weapon. His loader grabbed the grips, tried to take over. She chambered another round, fired again. He went down too. But more fighters were moving to the gun. She'd bought herself maybe 30 seconds. Aria looked at her remaining ammunition. 19 rounds. She looked at the number of fighters visible around her position. At least 25, probably more in reserve. The math wasn't working. Her body temperature was dropping. She could feel herself getting slower, her thoughts becoming fuzzy at the edges. Hypothermia was setting in for real now. She pulled out the half letter from her pocket, looked at the words she'd carved. Asterisk, I'll find my way home. Asterisk, liar, she whispered to herself, but smiled anyway. The machine gun opened up again, a new crew having taken over. The walls continued to crumble. Aria knew she had maybe one more defensive position left in this fortress before it became her tomb. She gathered her gear, preparing to move to her final fallback position. As she did, her radio crackled. Halo, Sentinel-7, coordinate, coming. The transmission was broken, nearly unintelligible, but it was something, a voice in the darkness. Aria pressed her transmit button. Sentinel-7, this is Halo. Say again, you're breaking up. 6 Rangers. Way to you. Hold on. 6 Rangers. Coming through a blizzard to a position 11 kilometers away. Aria did the math. Even moving fast, it would take them at least 3 more hours to reach her. Maybe 4 in these conditions. She had 19 rounds and was slowly freezing to death. But someone was coming. Someone hadn't forgotten her. Aria settled back into her position, brought her rifle to bear, and began scanning for targets. The cold didn't seem quite as brutal now. The exhaustion didn't drag quite as heavily, because she wasn't alone anymore. Any time now would be good, Sentinel-7, she murmured, then acquired her next target and squeezed the trigger. 18 rounds remaining. The Rangers had been moving for 3 hours when they found the first evidence of the SEAL team's passage, spent shell casings half buried in snow, a shredded tactical map clinging to a rock, and a dark stain that could only be blood. Beckett knelt, examining the blood. It had frozen quickly in the cold, which told him it was at least an hour old. He followed the trail with his eyes, saw where multiple people had moved through at speed, their tracks already mostly filled in by the storm. "They were here," Private Torres said quietly. "The SEALs. And they left," Staff Sergeant Hayes added, his voice flat. The team stood in silence for a moment, processing what that meant. These weren't raw recruits. They understood combat, understood the impossible calculations that went into life or death decisions. But understanding didn't make it easier to accept. "She saved them," Specialist Chen said. "That's what snipers do. They keep you alive from positions you can't see, taking out threats before they become problems. And they left her." "We don't know the full situation," Beckett said, though his own anger was a cold weight in his chest. "Maybe they had no choice." "There's always a choice," Torres said. Beckett looked at the young soldier, saw the idealism still burning bright despite 2 combat tours. Part of him wanted to protect that flame, to shield Torres from the harsh realities that would inevitably dim it. But another part knew that idealism was what drove men to climb mountains in blizzards to save strangers. "You're right," Beckett said. "There's always a choice. And we made ours. Now let's keep moving." They followed the SEAL team's path for another kilometer, using it as a guide through the worst of the terrain. Then Beckett led them off the trail, angling northwest toward the coordinates where Halo had last transmitted. The slope grew steeper. What had been difficult hiking became technical climbing. The wind had picked up to a howl that made communication nearly impossible even at arm's length. They moved in a tight line, each man keeping visual contact with the one in front. Corporal Reeves, their climber, took the lead. He moved with practiced efficiency despite the limited gear, finding routes through the ice and rock that the others could follow. But it was slow, exhausting work. They were crossing a narrow ridge when the attack came. The first burst of automatic fire came from their right flank, invisible in the blowing snow. Beckett heard bullets snap past his head, felt one tug at his sleeve. He dropped to his stomach, rolled behind a boulder. "Contact right," he shouted into his radio, though the wind nearly ripped the words away. The team scattered, finding what cover they could. Morgan, their communications specialist, wasn't fast enough. Beckett saw him spin, saw blood spray, watched him fall. Man down. Chen was already moving, crawling through the snow toward Morgan's position. Beckett returned fire in the direction the shots had come from. Short controlled bursts. He couldn't see the enemy. They were using the storm as effectively as any camouflage. But he could see muzzle flashes, brief orange blooms in the white chaos. Torres had found a position higher up the slope. His rifle cracked repeatedly, precise shots despite the conditions. One of the muzzle flashes stopped, then another. 6 hostiles, Torres called out. Maybe more. Can't get a clean count. Hayes had moved to flank left, was working his way around behind where he estimated the enemy position to be. Reeves provided covering fire, his shots disciplined and accurate. Chen reached Morgan, started working on him. Through the blowing snow, Beckett could see him cutting away gear, exposing the wound. Morgan was conscious, which was good. The amount of blood in the snow around him was less good. Beckett made a decision. They couldn't stay pinned here, and they couldn't afford a prolonged firefight. They had to move. "Hayes, you got a position?" "Almost. Give me 30 seconds. Torres, keep their heads down. Reeves, same. Chen, can he move?" "Negative. Femoral artery is nicked. I've got it clamped, but he needs to stay still." 30 seconds felt like an hour. Bullets continued to crack through the air. One of the attackers had a grenade launcher. Beckett heard the distinctive thump, then an explosion 20 meters to his left that showered him with ice and rock. Then Hayes' voice. "Got him. 3 tangos at your 10 o'clock, another 2 at 11. Engaging." His rifle opened up, firing fast and accurate. The enemy position erupted in confusion. Beckett heard shouts in Pashto, saw figures moving in the snow. "Light 'em up," Beckett ordered. The Rangers poured fire into the enemy position. Between Hayes' flanking attack and the concentrated fire from the front, the fight lasted less than a minute. When the shooting stopped, the only sounds were the wind and Morgan's labored breathing. Beckett moved forward with Torres, clearing the enemy position. 5 fighters, all down. They were better equipped than typical Taliban modern weapons, good cold weather gear, military-grade radios. These weren't locals, foreign fighters, probably Chechen or Pakistani. "We need to move," Chen called. "Morgan's stable, but he's lost a lot of blood, and we're leaving a trail even this storm can't hide." Beckett returned to the group. Morgan was pale but conscious, a pressure bandage wrapped around his thigh. "Can you walk?" "Can I hop?" Morgan asked through gritted teeth. "That seems more likely." "Hayes, Torres, support him. Reeves, you still have the lead. Chen, stay close to Morgan. I'll take rear guard." They moved out, slower now, burdened by their wounded. The coordinates for Halo's position were still 3 kilometers away. 3 kilometers of increasingly hostile terrain with an injured man and an enemy that now knew they were here. After 20 minutes, Morgan spoke up. "Sergeant, leave me. I'm slowing you down." "Shut up, Morgan. I'm serious." The mission is to bring everyone home," Beckett said, "including you, so save your breath for walking." They climbed. The ridge grew narrower, the drops on either side deeper. Reeves found a path that was barely wider than his shoulders, with 100-meter falls on both sides. They moved across it one at a time, Hayes and Torres practically carrying Morgan between them. Halfway across, Morgan's foot slipped. He started to fall, pulling Torres with him. Hayes lunged, grabbed Morgan's vest, held on while Torres regained his balance. For a moment, all 3 hung suspended over the void, weight and counterweight, life and death balanced on ice-covered rock. Then they were across, all 3 collapsing in the snow on the far side. "Everyone good?" Beckett asked. "Define good," Torres managed, but he was grinning. They pushed on. The wind continued to howl, the cold continued to bite, but they were closer now. Beckett could feel it, some instinct that came from years of navigation through hostile territory. Then they heard it, the distinctive crack of a heavy sniper rifle, followed by the steady thunder of a machine gun. "That's her," Reeves said. "She's still fighting." "Then let's make sure she's not fighting alone much longer," Beckett replied. They picked up the pace, racing toward the sound of gunfire, toward a woman they'd never met but would die to save. Because that's what Rangers did. Aria was down to her last magazine when she saw the flare. Not her flare, she was saving that for absolute emergency. This one came from the northwest, a green star shell that hung in the storm-tossed sky for a few precious seconds before the wind snuffed it out. But she'd seen it. Someone was out there. Someone was coming. She keyed her radio with numb fingers. "Sentinel-7, Halo, I saw your flare. I'm at bearing 090 from your position. Distance estimated 400 meters. Elevation gain approximately 150. Halo, Sentinel-7. Beckett's voice was clearer now, close enough that the storm couldn't completely distort it. "We see your position. 6 Rangers inbound. We have 1 wounded. ETA, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Aria looked at her remaining ammunition, 9 rounds, and the enemy fighters regrouping below. 15 minutes might as well be 15 hours. "Copy that, Sentinel-7. I'll keep the welcome mat out." She settled back into position, scanning for targets. The enemy had pulled back after their last assault, which meant they were either regrouping for something major or waiting for reinforcements. Neither option was good. Aria's body was failing in small ways. Her hands shook so badly she could barely work the rifle's bolt. Her feet were completely numb, she couldn't feel them at all anymore, which was terrifying. Her thoughts came slower, wrapped in a fuzzy cotton that she recognized as severe hypothermia. She'd stopped shivering, which was a very bad sign. Shivering meant your body was still fighting the cold. When you stopped shivering, it meant your body was giving up, shutting down non-essential systems to preserve the core. Aria laughed, a sound that came out as more of a croak. After everything she'd survived, IEDs, firefights, a helicopter crash, she was going to die because her thermostat broke. Movement below caught her attention. She forced herself to focus, peering through her scope. A group of fighters were moving up the slope, using the terrain expertly to mask their approach. She counted 8 of them, all carrying assault rifles, moving in a coordinated tactical formation. They were 50 meters out when she fired. Her first shot took down the lead fighter. Her second missed, her hands were shaking too badly. Her third clipped another fighter in the shoulder. He went down but kept moving, crawling behind cover. The return fire was immediate and overwhelming. Aria dropped behind her crumbling walls as bullets tore through what remained of her shelter. Stone chips cut her face. One round passed so close to her head she felt the pressure wave. She had 6 rounds left. The fighters pushed forward, closing the distance. 40 meters, 30. They knew she was nearly out of ammunition, knew she was on her last legs. They could afford to be aggressive now. Aria grabbed her last grenade, pulled the pin, counted to 2, threw it hard. The explosion bought her maybe 30 seconds. She used it to change positions, moving to what remained of the northern wall. Found a firing port, looked through her scope. 20 meters out, a fighter was setting up an RPG. If he got that shot off, it would be over. Aria's hands were shaking so badly, she could barely keep the crosshairs on target. She took a breath, held it, tried to steady herself. The cold was winning. Her body wasn't responding properly anymore. The fighter hoisted the RPG to his shoulder. Aria squeezed the trigger. The fighter dropped. 5 rounds left. Then she heard it. The sharp crack of M4 rifles, different from the AK pattern weapons the enemy carried. The fighters below her position suddenly started taking fire from their flank. Aria watched through her scope as they scattered, confused, trying to identify this new threat. Through the snow, she saw them. 6 figures in white winter camouflage, moving with tactical precision, their fire disciplined and devastating. The Rangers had arrived. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes. The enemy, caught between Aria's position above and the Rangers below, tried to retreat. Most didn't make it. The few who did scattered into the storm, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Then silence, broken only by the wind. Aria tried to stand, to climb down to meet them. Her legs wouldn't work. She couldn't feel them, couldn't make them respond to her commands. She fell, landing hard in the snow. Through dimming vision, she saw a figure climbing toward her. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confident efficiency of a professional soldier. He reached her position, dropped to his knees beside her. "Halo, I'm Sergeant Beckett Ward. We're going to get you out of here." Aria tried to respond. Her mouth wouldn't form words properly. "Not SEALs?" she managed. "No, we're Rangers. Heard your call. Couldn't leave you out here. 11 kilometers, give or take." He was checking her over, professional and quick. "Chen, get up here. She's hypothermic, possibly frostbite." Another figure appeared, carrying a medical pack. He started working on her immediately, checking vitals, pulling out warming blankets, starting an IV. "Why?" Aria asked through chattering teeth. "Don't know me." Beckett met her eyes. In the dim light filtering through the storm, his face was stern but kind. "Don't need to know you. You're a soldier. You were in trouble. That's enough." Tears froze on Aria's cheeks. She'd been alone for so long, fighting so hard, certain that she'd been abandoned, written off. And these men, strangers, Rangers from a different unit entirely, had climbed a mountain in a blizzard because that's what soldiers did for each other. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank us when we're all home safe," Beckett said. "Torres, Hayes, get her wrapped up. We need to move. This position is compromised and the enemy knows where we are." They lifted her carefully, wrapped in thermal blankets and a makeshift stretcher fashioned from poles and winter gear. She wanted to protest that she could walk, but her body had other ideas. She couldn't even feel her extremities anymore. As they prepared to move out, Aria saw another Ranger being supported by his teammates, a pressure bandage on his leg. "He's wounded," she said, "because of me." "He's wounded because he volunteered for a mission in hostile territory," Beckett corrected. "Same as the rest of us. Now, conserve your strength. We've got a long way to go." They began the descent, moving carefully through the storm. Aria drifted in and out of consciousness, the cold and exhaustion finally overwhelming even her iron will. But each time she surfaced, she saw them, 6 Rangers, carrying her and their own wounded, refusing to leave anyone behind. In the distance, she heard the enemy regrouping. Shouts in Pashto, engine starting up. They weren't giving up. "Contact imminent," someone said. Beckett's voice, calm and certain. "Then we'll deal with it. We didn't come this far to fail now." Aria closed her eyes, trusting these strangers with her life. And for the first time in hours, she let herself believe she might actually survive this night. They made it half a kilometer before the enemy caught up. Beckett had hoped for more time, but the fighters had motorcycles and knew the terrain. The Rangers, burdened with 2 casualties and moving through waist-deep snow, were slower than he'd calculated. The first indication of pursuit was the distant growl of engines. Then headlights appeared in the storm, bobbing and weaving as the bikes navigated the rough terrain. "Everyone down," Beckett ordered. "Defensive position, now." They were in a relatively open area, a saddle between two peaks that offered minimal cover. Beckett quickly assessed their options. They couldn't outrun the enemy. They couldn't hide, their tracks were too obvious. That left one choice: fight. "Reeves, Hayes, take the left flank. Torres, you're on the right with me. Chen, stay with the wounded, keep them warm and down." The team moved with practiced efficiency, taking up positions behind what sparse cover existed. Rocks, a slight rise in the terrain, the packed snow itself. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The motorcycles drew closer. Beckett counted at least 6 bikes, 2 or 3 fighters on each. Call it 15 to 20 hostiles, all probably carrying automatic weapons and grenades. Against 5 able-bodied rangers with limited ammunition. "Remember," Beckett said into his radio, "we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to buy time for extraction. Make every shot count. Controlled pairs. Pick your targets." The bikes were 200 meters out when the rangers opened fire. Torres shot first, his rifle cracking 3 times in rapid succession. The lead motorcycle went down, its riders tumbling into the snow. Beckett followed, targeting the second bike. His shots shattered the windscreen and the driver slumped forward. But the others were spreading out now, dismounting, using their vehicles for cover. They returned fire with AKMs and PKM machine guns, a wall of lead that tore through the night. Beckett pressed himself flat behind his rock as rounds sparked off the surface. He popped up, fired, dropped back down. Beside him, Torres was doing the same, his movements precise despite his youth. On the left flank, Hayes and Reeves were holding their own. Hayes had found a depression that gave him a good angle on the enemy's right side. He was picking off targets methodically, his decades of experience evident in every shot. But they were outnumbered and being flanked. Beckett could see enemy fighters working their way around both sides of their position. In 5 minutes, maybe less, the Rangers would be surrounded. Then Aria's voice, weak but clear, came over the radio. "Beckett, put me down. Give me a rifle." "Negative. You can barely move." "I can shoot. Been doing it. All night." Chen's voice. "She's right, Sergeant. She can't walk, but her hands are warming up. She could provide fire support." Beckett made a split-second decision. Do it. They propped Aria against a rock, wrapped in blankets, her rifle resting on an improvised rest made from packed snow. Her hands were still shaky, her face pale as death, but her eyes were focused. "Southeast quadrant," she said. 3 fighters. Trying to flank you. I've got them." Her rifle cracked. One of the flankers went down. She worked the bolt, fired again. Another down. "Southwest," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "Machine gunner setting up. Give me 5 seconds." She took her time with this shot, breathing, steadying herself. When she fired, the machine gunner collapsed over his weapon. The enemy's flanking movements stalled. The Rangers used the moment to consolidate their position, adjusting their lines to better protect their casualties and to interlock their fields of fire. But the enemy commander was good. Beckett could see them regrouping, preparing for a coordinated assault from multiple angles. When it came, it would be overwhelming. "Chen, how long until we can get air support?" Beckett asked. "Storm's still too thick. Pilots say they can't fly in these conditions." "What about ground reinforcements?" "Captain Morris is trying, but the nearest available unit is 4 hours out." 4 hours. They didn't have 4 hours. They probably didn't have 1 hour. Then Hayes's voice. "Urgent. RPG. Southeast." Beckett saw it. A fighter on one knee. The distinctive tube of an RPG-7 on his shoulder, aiming at their position. If that shot landed anywhere close, it would be devastating. Aria saw it too. She swung her rifle, tried to acquire the target, but her hands were shaking again, her body fighting her. Torres beat her to it. His shot took the RPG gunner in the chest just as he was pulling the trigger. The rocket launched wild, spiraling up into the storm before exploding harmlessly against the mountainside. The concussion from the blast triggered something. Snow that had been building up on the slopes above them started to move, slowly at first, then faster, gathering mass and momentum. "Avalanche!" Reeves shouted. But the snow wasn't coming at them. It was sliding down toward the enemy position, a white wall of death that swallowed everything in its path. Beckett watched in awe as nature did what the Rangers couldn't. It swept the enemy aside, burying fighters and motorcycles under tons of snow and ice. When the rumbling stopped, the mountainside was quiet. The enemy that had been preparing to overwhelm them was gone, buried or scattered. "Did we just get saved by an avalanche?" Torres asked, his voice stunned. "I'll take it," Beckett replied. "But we need to move. That snowslide might have taken out this group, but it won't stop reinforcements. Chen, what's the weather looking like?" Chen checked his radio, contacted base. "Storm's starting to break up. We've got maybe a 10-minute window coming in about 20 minutes. Captain Morris is scrambling a helicopter." Beckett looked at the terrain between their current position and the nearest flat area where a helicopter could land. It was maybe 400 meters, all uphill, through deep snow, with 2 casualties. "We can make that," he said. "Let's move, people. No time to rest." They gathered their gear, adjusted their loads. Aria tried to stand, to carry her own weight. She made it 3 steps before her legs gave out again. "Stubborn," Beckett said, but he was smiling. He and Hayes rigged a proper stretcher, got her secured. Morgan was already strapped to another. The climb was brutal. Every step was an exercise in willpower over exhaustion. But they kept moving, driven by the promise of extraction, the hope of survival. 15 minutes later, they reached the landing zone, a relatively flat area just below a ridgeline. Chen popped smoke, marking their position. The wind grabbed it, but enough remained visible. Then they heard it. The distinctive whoop, whoop, whoop of rotor blades. An HH-60 Pavehawk appeared through the breaking clouds, fighting the wind, the pilot performing what had to be one of the most dangerous approaches of his career. The helicopter settled onto the snow, its rotors whipping up a blizzard of their own. The crew chief jumped out, waving them forward. "Casualties first," Beckett shouted. They loaded Morgan, then Aria. She grabbed Beckett's arm as they strapped her in. "Thank you," she said, "for not leaving me behind." "No one gets left behind," Beckett replied. "Not on my watch." The others loaded up. Beckett did a final head count. All 6 Rangers, plus Aria, then climbed aboard. The helicopter lifted off immediately, the pilot not wasting a second. As they rose above the mountain, Aria looked down at her fortress, at the bodies scattered across the snow, at the position where she'd nearly died alone. The storm was breaking now, revealing the savage beauty of the Hindu Kush in the pale light of dawn. It was Christmas morning. She looked at the Rangers sitting around her, these men who'd risked everything for a stranger. Beckett caught her eye and nodded. No words were needed. Aria closed her eyes and let herself sleep for the first time in 36 hours, finally safe, finally home.